picture is worth 1,000 words, but the image posted by the President of the United States just hours before a critical NATO summit speaks only one: humiliation. President Donald Trump has reignited his bitter and deeply personal feud with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni by sharing a mocking photograph of the Italian leader with the words "restraining order needed" branded across the top. The post, delivered to his Truth Social account, is not a diplomatic signal. It is a public flogging of a once close ally, and it has detonated inside the already tense corridors of the Atlantic Alliance. The timing of this presidential provocation could not be more pointed or more sensitive. The mocking image was shared by President Trump only hours before he is scheduled to meet with Prime Minister Meloni face-to-face at a NATO summit this week. The summit, which will gather all 32 allied countries, is being hosted by Turkey in Ankara on Tuesday and Wednesday. The choice of venue has already triggered widespread protests across the host country, adding an additional layer of volatility to an already charged atmosphere. Now, instead of focusing on alliance unity and strategic coordination, the diplomatic world is asking a single, awkward question: how will the Italian Prime Minister respond when she comes face-to-face with the man who just publicly branded her as someone in need of a restraining order? The scathing social media attack is merely the latest chapter in the spectacular breakdown of what was once a friendly and mutually beneficial relationship. President Trump and Prime Minister Meloni were originally viewed as ideological allies and personal friends, two leaders who shared a common worldview and a natural political kinship. That friendship has now curdled into something unrecognizable. The tensions that have driven them apart first surfaced earlier this year and initially centered on the war in Iran. What began as a policy disagreement has since spiraled into an ongoing and increasingly vicious social media war, with each new post and each new comment deepening the wound. Prime Minister Meloni has so far not responded directly to the latest provocation, but Italy's defense minister, Guido Crosetto, has stepped forward to offer a measured and strikingly diplomatic response. Speaking to Italy's Sky TV, Crosetto stated, "I did not have any reaction to the post. The fundamental thing is to maintain relations with a key ally like the USA." He added a phrase that seemed designed to put the entire ugly episode into a broader context, saying, "People come and go, but relationships remain." The words were calm and careful, but they could not fully conceal the awkwardness of a senior Italian official having to explain why his country's leader was being mocked by the President of the United States on the eve of a major international summit. The president also made a comment that seemed to further diminish the Italian leader, stating that she might be happy that I talked to her. I didn't have to talk to her. The dismissive tone of this remark, suggesting that the Italian Prime Minister should be grateful for the mere fact of his attention, added insult to the already graphic injury of the restraining order post. The origins of this bitter feud can be traced back to a disputed encounter and a series of increasingly sharp exchanges. Prime Minister Meloni had previously responded to President Trump's attacks by video, stating that she was astonished by his comments, which she described as completely made up. She fired back with evident frustration, declaring that neither I nor Italy ever beg. Meloni expressed her inability to understand why President Trump had chosen to target an ally in such a public and pointed manner, but she added a note of weary resignation, stating that it's not the first time it's happened after all. The Italian leader then leveled a charge that cut to the heart of the alliance's concerns about President Trump's approach to global affairs. She accused him of showing more leniency and accommodation to adversaries of the United States and the wider West than to long-standing and loyal partners. Speaking directly to her followers on Instagram, Meloni stated, "I can only say that it's unfortunate that he doesn't have the same determination toward the enemies of the West, toward the enemies of the United States, toward leaders with whom he appears much more accommodating." The accusation was devastating, that the American president treats his friends worse than his foes. The president fired back the very next day. He insisted that the Italian leader had repeatedly asked him for a photo, writing on Truth Social that Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni asked, over and over, for a picture with me during the G7 meeting in France. The misspelling of her first name appeared to be an additional, perhaps deliberate, slight. President Trump then pivoted from the disputed photo encounter to a direct attack on Meloni's domestic political standing and on Italy's conduct during the Iran conflict. As we pause here, we have detailed the mocking post, the history of the feud, and the accusations of betrayal. When we return, we will examine the Iran war tensions that ignited this crisis, and the threat President Trump made to pull American troops from Italian soil. Stay with us. We detailed President Trump's mocking social media post targeting Prime Minister Meloni, the history of their deteriorating relationship, and her accusation that he treats adversaries with more respect than allies. We now turn to the specific policy disputes that ignited this diplomatic firestorm and the serious consequences that have followed. The core of the rift between President Trump and Prime Minister Meloni lies in the war with Iran. The president turned from the disputed G7 photo encounter to a direct and bruising attack on Meloni's domestic standing and Italy's position during the conflict. Writing on Truth Social, President Trump stated, "She is doing poorly in Italy with her level of popularity, possibly because she turned down the United States of America, a country that truly loves and protects Italy, when it came to denying Iran from obtaining or developing a nuclear weapon." The message was clear. The president was linking Meloni's political fortunes at home to her refusal to fully support American military operations against Tehran. The specific incident that triggered Washington's anger occurred in March. According to reporting by Politico, Italy denied permission for United States aircraft to land at the Sigonella Air Base in Sicily before flying on to the Middle East. Sigonella is a critical logistical hub for American operations in the region, and the denial of access represented a significant obstacle to the Pentagon's planning. Meloni's stance on Iran prompted a blunt and angry rebuke from the American leader, who accused her of lacking courage and of failing to help America with its NATO obligations at a critical moment. President Trump then escalated the dispute dramatically by threatening to pull United States troops from Italian soil entirely. He stated that Rome has not been of any help to us in the Iran war. The threat to withdraw American forces, who have been stationed in Italy for decades as part of the NATO alliance, represented a major escalation in the feud. It transformed what might have been a policy disagreement into a potential rupture in the fundamental security relationship between the two nations. Prime Minister Meloni, for her part, did not remain silent. She responded once again to President Trump's attacks, taking to Instagram to fire back with evident frustration. "These constant, unprovoked attacks are senseless," she stated. Addressing the president's comments about her domestic popularity directly, she added a pointed rejoinder. "As for my popularity, being your friend certainly has not helped it, nor does it depend on my relationship with you." The Italian leader, once considered one of President Trump's closest European allies, made clear that her political standing rested on one thing alone: her handling of Italy's national interests. Meloni then addressed the specific complaint about American access to Italian military facilities. She stated clearly that U.S. access to military installations in Italy was covered by agreements that Rome had always honored. The implication was that Italy had acted within the bounds of existing treaties, and that the president's anger was misplaced, or worse, manufactured. The feud also took a detour through the Vatican. Meloni criticized President Trump for lashing out at Pope Leo over the pontiff's condemnation of the Iran conflict. This added a moral and religious dimension to an already multi-layered dispute, with the Italian leader positioning herself as a defender not only of her nation's sovereignty, but of the moral authority of the Holy See. That concludes our comprehensive coverage of the extraordinary and deeply troubling breakdown in relations between President Donald Trump and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. To briefly summarize the key developments we have brought you this evening, the President of the United States has posted a mocking image of the Italian leader with the words "restraining order needed" emblazoned across it, just hours before the two are scheduled to meet at a NATO summit in Ankara. The attack is the latest in a feud that began over the war in Iran, escalated when Italy denied American aircraft access to the Sigonella Air Base in Sicily, and reached a boiling point when President Trump threatened to withdraw U.S. troops from Italian soil entirely. Prime Minister Meloni has responded with a mixture of astonishment and defiance, accusing the president of treating adversaries with more respect than long-standing allies, and stating that being his friend has not helped her popularity. Italy's defense minister has urged calm, reminding the world that people come and go but relationships between nations must endure. As the two leaders prepare to come face-to-face in Turkey, the world will be watching to see whether diplomacy can survive such a public and personal rupture. From all of us here in the newsroom, good evening.